Okay, we're live. Excellent. Hi, everyone. This is Thomas Newman of VIVA Financial Tuition, and I'm joining my colleagues today for this Ask Me Anything session, or Ask Us Anything session. So I'm joined by Hugh Martin and Hugo Newman.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, guys.
So the point of this session is that you get to ask any CIMA-related questions that you have. Okay, so typically on these sessions we get questions about, exam technique or the order of sitting certain exams. There could be case study related questions, objective test questions. Sometimes we get technical queries as well. And between the three of us, we can do, I think, a pretty good job of answering your requests. So the way you can put your questions to us are by way of the chat box there on the right. So there's a little chat icon you should see. If you click on that, there is the possibility to type your question in there. And we've tried this a number of times in previous sessions. There is a speak icon. And if you click on that and you request to speak, we will accept that request. And it's a bit hit or miss. Sometimes students are able to come through with their microphone and their camera, if they so wish, to actually speak their question. And that's great when it works, but it's a little bit temperamental. So just be aware of that. So you can use those two forms to put your questions to us. Chat and speak. Okay, so still waiting for questions to come through. There's always a little bit of, it's always a little slow at the start, but I think once it gets rolling, then people get right into it. So we're waiting.
No questions about the upcoming case study exams for the next round. I think we're
August. Yeah, it's going to come around.
Big one. Yeah.
Quickly. Yeah.
There's normally a ton of questions about the OCS and the MCS and sometimes the SCS. So if anyone has questions about the case.
Here we go. So we've got the first question from Val. Well, one thing I would ask, guys, is if you don't mind, when you write your questions, that you send them to everybody, because I think there's an option there. You can send it privately, in which case nobody else gets to see the question, and you can also send it to everybody. So ideally, guys, if you could send it to everyone so that everyone can see the question, and that would be great. So Val asks a question, and we'll read this one out. I'm returning to my studies after many years. I'm studying the strategic level. Do you suggest revising management level before starting the strategic level? Also, what order do you suggest taking the strategic level exams in? First of all, Val, very well done to you for returning to your studies and trying to see it through. You're nearly there. You've gone through the first two levels. I think it's great that you're going to see it out. So assuming then that you have the three objective test subjects, that's E3, F3, P3, and the strategic case study exam. The order in which you take those exams, we often get that question, and I'm never really quite sure what to say there. I think it's very subjective. Me personally, I would start with the subject that I find easiest, particularly if you've had a lot of time since you've studied last, because you can kind of hit the ground running. You'll be comfortable studying the subject you like best or you find easiest, and that will be different for everybody. And you can probably study it quickest and hopefully get the pass mark. And when you do, then it'll give you confidence and a boost to keep going, to take on the tougher subjects. So I would tend to say that you should start with the objective test that you find easiest, and go from there. And then maybe the one you find less hard, you do next, and then you would leave the hardest one maybe until the end before taking the SCS. And then that would allow you to, by taking the hardest objective test subject last, you would have it quite fresh in your memory when you sit the SCS. That would be another advantage of that approach. But that's just me, you know. I think it's very subjective. You know, Hugh and Hugo, I'm not sure if you guys would feel differently about that approach.
No, that's the approach that I would take as well. Yeah, start with the one I find easiest.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And the other part of the question was, do I revise the management level before? I wouldn't. If I'm being honest with you, I wouldn't. There'd be no point, Val. You know what I mean? A lot of the content kind of overlaps. So by virtue of studying E3, you'll probably come across some management stuff in E3 that might be in E2 and with different subjects as well, if they're relevant to that topic. You know, so.
Yeah, it's, you know, if you're at the management level, I would be tempted to say, and you're asking, should I go back and look at operational stuff? I would be more inclined to say there that you probably should brush up on some of the basics from the operational level, because if you were taking advanced management accounting and advanced financial reporting, you know, they very much build on what came before for F1 and P1. So it would probably be in your interests to go back and just brush up on the basic concepts. But with the strategic level, you know, P3 and F3, they don't really build so much on P2 and F2. So I think you're actually fine to start from scratch at the strategic level. So the next question is from Mahela, who says, first of all, thank you for the invite. Well, you're very welcome, Mahela. I want to double check with regards to the new method of case study pre-scene. Can the same questions come into the second round in August? So Mahela is referring to the fact here that not so long ago, CIMA changed its approach with the case study exams. So there are 4 case study exam windows. And previously, CIMA was releasing a brand new pre-scene for each of those 4 windows. So every 3 months, you would have a new pre-scene to study. And with the new case study method, you have just 2 pre-scene documents released per year. So 1 pre-scene document would serve for the May window and the August windows, the same pre-scene. And then you would have a new pre-scene document for the November window and the following February. So that makes things a little bit easier, I think, for students, because if you sit the first, you know, exam in May, for example, you know that if you fail and you have to do it again in August, that you're not starting from zero. You've read the pre-scene, you're familiar with it. So it has that advantage. As for the same questions coming up in the second round, so, you know, the same questions being repeated from May, again in August, I would say the likelihood is very low that would happen. I think probably what you would see is that you've got similar themes being repeated. But I'm not sure, Hugh, if you've got something to add on that one.
That's a good question. I know we've had that question before. The answer, yeah, as Thomas said, I mean, you're not going to get the exact same question verbatim. Very unlikely. You know, we can't say for definite on anything, but, you know, it's likely the case you're not going to get the same question, but you could be testing the same topic, which has happened before. So the case study last time, the strategic case study, scenario planning was tested in at least one of the first 3 variants, and then 4, 5, 6, which would have been the later window, it was also tested, but in a different way. So it could be tested in a different way.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not sure we've had this question, the next one, in previous sessions that we've done. That's an interesting one. Yash says, I've registered as an A-star student, which means I've 15 exemptions. Will that affect my employability if I clear SCS? Well, congratulations, Yash, first of all. I don't think I've ever actually heard of a student who's had so many exemptions. That's great. And it means you only have to do the SCS. As for, you know, affecting your employability or not, I mean, I don't really know, to be quite honest with you. I'm not sure I could give you an answer on that. Guys, anything there?
Well, I suppose, I mean, ultimately, obtaining the qualification is the important thing in terms of employability. So do exemptions matter? In general, from my personal experience, not particularly. Your employer is probably not going to ask for your exemptions, but if you've been given 15 exemptions, I mean, generally speaking, from my experience, in certain regions, CIMA give large exemptions to people who have worked as CFOs or people who have, a large amount of experience in a senior financial position. So I would assume if you've been given 15 exemptions, you must have a pretty good career already. As is the case in Singapore and in the UK, if you're a part of the CFO program, I believe if you've been a CFO for a number of years, you get a lot of exemptions. You only have to sit the SES. So is it going to affect your career prospects by having exemptions? Probably not. But of course, it'll depend on the employer ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume that, and this would be something that CIMA would really, they'd be the right people to answer such a question, I think. But I would assume that if CIMA has taken the opinion that you should have all of those exemptions, it's because they believe you have the technical capabilities already under your belt, and there is no need for you to do the exams. And if that's the case, then it's kind of a stamp of approval from CIMA. This person is technically competent. There's no need for them to sit these exams because it's redundant. Then that to me is a clear signal that it should not affect your employability. And then the second part of Yash's comment there, how is CIMA different from other global charter degrees for the longer term? Yeah, I mean, it's a common kind of question people have. Which one is best? Which accountancy qualification is best? And again, it's very subjective, and it depends on your career track, I would say. In general, people who take CIMA, they're more interested in working in industry, and they're more interested in obtaining sort of financial strategic skills. Whereas people who would go the ACCA route or ACA route, they're more interested in the technical, purely technical financial accounting and tax skills, the kind of skills that an auditor might have, or so you're not really working in industry, you're working in practice. So it depends very much, I think, on your career track as to which one is best. So
there's a question from Dorota. I didn't pronounce your name there correctly. Sorry if I haven't. Will the new version of the BPP books be available to all access users? Currently, the 2019 books are available.
Yeah, so I can answer that one. Yes, they will be, Dorota. So there were some minor changes made. So, I mean, you can safely use the texts that are already there, but BPP is sending us through very shortly the updated versions. So there'll be some small changes to some of the texts, and they will be available to all access members. Yeah.
So there's another question just straight after from Thuruvaran. Again, hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly there. I got an exemption from my degree, and this is a very common question that we get, so it's a good question. I got the exemption from my degree to do directly the MCS exams. This is a gateway student, okay? So however, I have no idea where to start things from. I got exemptions from all 3 OTQs at the management level. Please guide me on where to start. Thank you. So that's a big question. That's a very common question that we get. I'm someone who's a gateway student. Where do I start? Ultimately, it kind of depends on you because, your exemptions will probably have come from the fact that you did, an MBA or, a master's in accountancy or a master's in economics. So it depends on what it was that you did to get the exemption. So if you're someone who did, say, an MAC, a master's in accountancy, possibly you should start with a different set of topics to someone who did, a different degree, maybe an MBA, and got the same set of exemptions. So it depends on your own personal circumstance, but probably start off with, it's up to you. If it was me, I would start off with probably F2 or P2, some of the more technical ones that cause people problems. Mm-hmm. And I would literally go through, with all access, on our website. There's a ton of really, really good content for P2 and F2 and E2. And I would literally just work my way through the videos, start to finish. You know, you may be able to get through quite quickly if you have those exemptions. You may be familiar, you know, probably are familiar with a lot of the concepts if you've been granted the exemptions. But I do think it's important for Gateway students to go through the material because, you know, what if it comes up in an exam? You know, what if there's a topic that, you know, maybe you're not overly familiar with and you've just breezed through it? You know, if it comes up in the MCS, you're not going to be well covered. So I do think it's important to go through, even though you've been given exemptions, you know, do that, go through each individual objective test, and then, you know, try to familiarize yourself with the MCS paper by going through the past papers and get an idea for what it looks like and, you know, the types of questions that come up, just to get a feel for it if it's your first ever MCS exam. But I think the guys might have a different opinion, but that's my tip. Yeah,
I guess, you know, it depends in part as well on when you plan on sitting the MCS and how much time you actually have. So what, we're in June now, for example, and if you're planning on sitting the MCS in August, obviously you don't have as much time if you plan on sitting it in November, for example. So if you're sitting it in November, then you can take your time going through the objective materials for the previous subjects and you can go through every single video and all the practice questions, whereas realistically you might not have that kind of time to work with if you're planning on sitting in August. So let's suppose, for the sake of argument, that you do have fairly limited amount of time. A good way to start, which I often recommend to students, would be with, if you have signed up for our MCS course, for example, or if you're an All Access member, you can start by looking at the foundational materials in the MCS course itself, where we have review videos for the objective tests. So we'll have review videos for E2, F2, and P2. And you can go through those videos and it'll give you a good overview of what's included in each subject, in each objective subject. And that will give you a kind of a general sense of what's included, and you'll be able to kind of get an idea of the things that just don't sound familiar to you or that you've never come across before. And that might be a good thing to prioritize, would be the stuff that sounds least familiar to you. So you could make a kind of a short list of topics that are least familiar to you. And then you can go back and do a deeper dive on those topics from the suite of objective videos that we have as part of All Access, for example. You could go back to F2, P2, and E2, pick out those topics that sound least familiar. And then I would go back into the MCS course and get started. If you're, as I said, if you are relatively short on time, and go through the pre-scene analysis, go through all of the applied videos, especially where we apply certain theories and models and principles from E2, F2, and P2 to the case study. And then, you know, as you're going through the case study, certain things will be mentioned maybe as well that you're not familiar with. Again, that will give you a sense of things that you should go back and look at. That will be the kind of time constrained approach, I guess. But it really is, you know, it really does depend on how much time you have to study. You know, it might be the case that within the next 2 months, you can really dedicate a lot of study time, in which case you might be able to go back and do a kind of a full review of each of the subjects. That's the ideal. And I agree with Hugh in that sense. You know, if you have enough time, you know, it's a good idea to go back through the E2, P2, and F2 from start to finish if possible, and kind of have a good sense of what's included. If you have those exemptions, as Hugh said, you know, there's probably a good chance you have some good knowledge already of a lot of the topics, so it won't necessarily mean you're starting from scratch. But that's what I would suggest. You know, again, it does depend on your time constraints as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they're great comments. You know, it is important. It's very important to go back and review theory if you are a Gateway student, because, you know, we're not going to sugarcoat it. The Gateway exam has a very high fail rate. It is the highest fail rate of all of the CIMA exams. So, you know, don't fall into the trap of thinking that just because you were given some exemptions there that you're going to breeze through the MCS. Okay, you definitely want to go back, and you definitely you want to go back and review objective theory, and you need to do more of that study than regular, let's say, MCS students who've gone through E2, F2, P2 and passed them recently. Okay.
Yeah.
So Hugo referred to the All Access membership that we have. So that's a 1 year access to our massive library of CIMA content. So it's about 1,000 hours of CIMA content between videos and texts, both case and questions, mock exams as well, both objective test and case study. And that typically retails for £299 for 365 days of access. But for the next 2 days, for the people who've attended this webinar session, you'll see in the offers section there's a little offers button. I published an offer there for VIVA's All Access. It's usually $299, and we have a special offer of $229 for all of that content. So if you are interested in that, feel free to click on that link and purchase for that discounted price. Okay. So
there's a question there from Mushtaq, I think. So it's just a one after. So Mushtaq says hi, and then the first part of the question is: I'm studying P2 for so long, and many times failed marginally. All of my exam scores above 90 to 96. Okay, so very marginal there. I did not give up, and learning with a busy work schedule, I'm worried about sitting the exam since I've already failed many attempts. Please advise how I should prepare for the next exam. Well, P2 is, I think it is the number one for failure rate at the moment, outside of the case study exam. So, certainly it's a challenging exam, definitely the case. And that's been the case for a few years now, since the 2019 syllabus change. So that's something that's always been the way. I suppose, but like with P2, it's quite a numerical exam. The numerical parts are what students typically find the most difficult. So, the investment appraisal type stuff and the more advanced time value money based calculations, people tend to find them quite difficult. If I'm being honest with you, the best thing for P2 prep is just practice and more practice with objective test questions, because the permutation or the combination of questions that you can get for P2 is quite limited. So if you do a lot of practice, it'll serve you really well in the exam. I know that seems a bit kind of common sense, but you need to be practicing a lot of questions, because invariably the more you practice, the higher the likelihood that similar type questions will come up in your paper eventually, and hopefully then you'll get quicker as well at doing those more advanced calculations. Though typically that's just my opinion, that students find the quantitative, the numerical questions difficult for P2, but the qualitative questions are important as well. And again, the combinations of questions that come up are relatively low. So, if you know them well, if you practice them often and do a lot of variety, you will do well in the exam. So use our banks, which we have on our website with All Access. Again, within P2, there's about 800 questions, I think.
Yeah,
for P2.
Thereabouts, yeah.
So there's plenty there to keep you busy. And then we also have a PPP textbook. And if you go into the textbook, there are questions within there that are quite good as well. So you have, another 80 to 100 questions within that book. So it's another resource,
Yeah. And our P2 tutor, Nick Drape of the University of Liverpool, he's, a prize-winning lecturer. He put together a really great series of lectures on P2, explains things very, very clearly. So again, if you're an All Access member, you would have access to those videos. Okay.
So the next one is from Isuru. Hi, I completed my E3 objective test last April, but I had completed F3 and P3 years ago. So I have to review F3 and P3 much more in detail before sitting for the case study. I could start studying for the case study only at the start of this June. In your opinion, should I go for the case study this August or postpone till November? Appreciate your thoughts. Thanks. And Isuru is also an All Access member. So you need to revise F3 and P3 because presumably you sat them under the old syllabus, I guess, if you're saying that you sat them years ago, in which case there might be certain new topics. And given that, is it possible or realistic to sit and pass the exam in August? I would say that it is possible, certainly. But again, and I don't like giving this kind of answer, but it's just true. It does depend on I guess, a lot on the time that you have to study. So, I mean, I would say yes. I would say there's no reason why you can't go back and refresh yourself on F3 and P3 in the way that I suggested earlier. You know, you start with those review videos, see if there are topics that jump out at you as unfamiliar that you may have forgotten. And if you're an All Access member, you can then go back and avail yourself of all the videos that we have for F3 and P3, and you know, fill in those knowledge gaps that you have. But I'm not sure. I mean, that's my own opinion. Maybe Hugh and Thomas would differ from me in that respect, or have a different idea as to the best approach there.
No, I agree with you. I mean, it depends how far back. So some people that I've talked to before, you know, they did these exams 10, 15 years ago, which would have been paper based, and you know, the syllabus was very, very, very different back then. If you're someone who's sat in the 2015 syllabus, it's not a big deal. There are changes. P3, there's a big cyber risk element now, which is massive. And with E3, there's a digital strategy and ecosystems element that was added. So, you know, if it was the 2015 syllabus, as long as you were prepared to go over those new areas yourself and probably do it now, then yeah, I think you could definitely pass. But if you did the paper-based exams, it would depend how much time you have to study. You would probably need a lot more time, because that could be, you know, 10, 15, 20 years ago, you know. Yeah.
So we've got a few comments, I think, that we skipped out there. There's one from Mohammed there. Is there any coaching for E3, P3 and F3 under Hugh Martin? Oh, Hugh, that's there is SCS coaching from Hugh this August. So if you're taking the SCS, Hugh runs our SCS Elite course for this August. It's an absolutely great course, and I'm going to put the link in here actually if you're interested in checking that out. We think it's about we think it's as complete an SCS course as there is on the market, so definitely worth checking that out. But E3, P3 and F3 modules, Hugh, you're not teaching those?
Not at the moment. Not at the moment. Might be something we do in the future, but I not at the moment. No. Yeah. But I do thank you very much for the positive feedback, Mohammed. So I do appreciate that. And there's another question actually, I think even before that, from Jasanta.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I skipped ahead there. I don't know what happened.
No.
I went about 5 questions ahead. Anyway.
Yeah.
So Jasanta says, with regards to the MCS, did you guys get any feedback regarding the exams that was written in May with regards to the level of difficulty? I've seen on Facebook people saying it was extremely difficult. I was wondering if you guys got any feedback. So Jasanta, you know yourself from the exam, you know, students are not allowed to talk about the content of the exam that they sat until the papers are released. So no one has told us about the exact content of the exam. So, you know, we don't really know. We did have students in the MCS Elite class say that it was, I wouldn't say the word difficult, but they used strange. Some of the questions were quite unexpected. That's the feedback that I've gotten. I haven't actually heard anyone say it was extremely difficult, but that might be the case. That doesn't mean that's not the case. But I did hear that some of the questions were obscure, which, you know, can happen. Of course, difficulty is relative, you know, depending on what it is that you prefer, and some people may find those obscure questions a bit better than others. So, you know, I haven't, in short.
Mm-hmm. So Michael says, access to study resources were cancelled, and I was hoping that it should have been cancelled when my results are out, because some students might want to continue studying until the results are out. Okay, Michael, so I'll take a look at that for you after the session. You were an elite course student and you had all access as part of that. So it may be that all access was removed once the course finished. But let me take a look at that for you after the session, and I'll get back to you, okay? Okay.
So we have a question from Kirti S. I'm an undergraduate, okay, and I'm currently pursuing my management level. Okay. Would an MBA be recommended post completion of my strategic level. I mean, it totally depends what you want to do with it. If you want to work in practice and you're working as an auditor and you want to stay in Big Four or something like that, I don't think an MBA is going to be a game changer, but it might be. It depends where you're getting it from. Depends how well you're doing it. I think there's a lot of variables there. In terms of doing an MBA for exemptions purposes, I wouldn't recommend just doing a qualification to get exemptions, which someone has told me about before, that they were getting sort of degrees to kind of get exemptions from CIMA exams. Wouldn't recommend that.
I don't particularly like MBAs, not the people behind the MBAs. What I mean is the qualification itself. I think that there's far, far more bang for your buck with professional qualifications like CIMA, ACCA, etc. CIMA, I think, is a great alternative to an MBA. It's much more cost effective for a start. It's very respected by employers, just as respected, I would say, as an MBA, and gives you more technical skills. It also gives you some of the softer skills that you might also expect to get on an MBA course, right? I mean, I did both, really. It wasn't quite a full MBA, but it was kind of a 1-year MBA before I did CIMA, and I was altogether more impressed with the content that I got from CIMA. I just thought it was just a richer experience. It was tougher, CIMA, but that's a good thing. With the MBA, I just thought it was a bit wishy-washy, it was very expensive. And I'm not really sure it gave me many skills, to be honest with you. Some people, I think, benefit from it because of the networking and all of that sort of stuff, but I don't know. I don't know how valuable that is. I mean, it depends very much on where you would go. If you're going to Harvard Business School to do your MBA, probably the payoff is good in terms of networking with future leaders of all sorts of important institutions. But below that top tier, I'm not quite sure. Okay. So Vonani says, good day. I've written the MCS twice and I seem to be struggling with one of the core activities. Evaluate opportunities to add value. Is there any area which you can recommend that I advise on the F2, E2 or P2 subjects?
Yeah, so this is a good question. Actually, I have a document actually on this. So the first thing I would say, Vanani, is in your favorite search engine, try and look for the MCS blueprint documents. And what that'll do is a document from CIMA that basically shows how your MCS exam is made up. And what it'll do is it'll break out that statement into several ICANN statements. I think there's 6 or 7 for that particular one. And that then will give you an idea as to what it is you need to know for that particular area. So in the case of this particular one, which I think is A, it's core activity A, within that there's like pricing strategies, which is P2. There's working with digital sources, which I think is E2. All of the subjects within A are E2 and P2 related. There's no F2 related subjects within A. But I would recommend going through the ICANN statements. You'll as soon as you read them, you'll know, okay, that's from P2. For example, pricing, that's clear as day from P2. So that'll give you a breakdown, I suppose, of what it is that you're looking at. I know you probably maybe failed the exam. You're looking at the screen that tells you failed and what area you need to focus on. They don't actually break out the ICANN statements on the CIMA website, so you have to do that yourself. So that's what I would do.
Okay. Dorota says, my plan is to take E3, F3 and P3 exams in July. Would you recommend matching all 3 subjects or just focusing on one subject at a time? Spend 2 weeks on each subject in turn. Let's say that strikes me as very ambitious, Dorota. If you can do it, then that would be amazing. I personally liked to do one subject at a time. But everyone's is different there, and it might well be that you have, I don't know your circumstances, but it might well be that you have the complete month of July off or something like that, and that would change. That would alter maybe slightly what I'm saying there, because you could just dedicate 40 hours each week to study, and you could probably go at all 3 then, and get them done. But I'm tempted to kind of say, don't put too much pressure on yourself and obsess about having to pass all 3 in 1 month, because it is ambitious. And you might be maybe biting off more than you can chew, and it might be better to take a little bit of a slower run at it. But everyone is different, so I would say though 1 at a time is better.
Yeah,
but I'm not sure about the guys.
Again, yeah, I agree. I mean, I agree. It's subject, and it is subjective to some extent. But I can't see my brain being able to handle
nor mine
doing, studying E3, P3 and F3 at the same time on any given day, and doing that every single day consecutively for 30 days and being able to retain everything from each of the subjects and not confusing one with the other. Or so I think, doing one first and then the other would be the best way to go. But yeah, as Thomas said, if you can pull it off, let us know. It'd be very impressive. And good luck.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, look, there we go. Dorota, thank you very much. Your P2 lectures are amazing, very detailed. Yeah, that's excellent. All down to Nick. It's got nothing to do with us. It's all Nick. We try to ensure that we work with very, very good tutors. So we do a mix of, sometimes we do that stuff ourselves, and Hugh has done lectures, and Hugo's done lectures, and I've in the past done a lot of case study lectures myself. And the people, the other tutors we work with, we try to ensure that they're really, really good. So delighted to hear that.
So I think Lindsay has a question. There's some really positive comments though, Mushtaq and Turan, and appreciate that. Okay. So there's a question here from Lindsay. It says, I have purchased the All Access pass. Okay, cool. And need to complete F2 and P2. Are all the lectures on demand? So the first answer to that, I suppose, is a simple yes. They are. Yeah, you can watch them anytime you want, at your leisure. So that they are. You're right. Yeah. I haven't looked through the modules yet. Is there a preferred order to sit these OTs? It's a similar question to before, isn't it? I mean, what exams do you sit first? I agree with Thomas. I think it's good to sit the ones that you're most comfortable with first, and you build up a kind of confidence in that level, and then there's momentum there, and that's what I used to do. So the strategic level, I did E3. I tended to do well in these. Then I did P3, and then I did F3, and that's I just did it by the failure rates as well. So naturally, the hardest subject back in that time was F3. So that was the last one I did. But it depends, F2 and P2 are really tough subjects for their own reasons. So it depends what you're better at. If you're good at financial reporting and that's what you work at on a day-to-day basis, then F2 might be a breeze for you. It depends on your proclivity towards it. So, but likewise, you may be someone that works in corporate finance or consulting or something like that, and P2 might be a breeze for you. So it just depends. I would pick the one that's easiest to you first, though.
Yeah. Okay, guys, any more questions?
So Dorota says, my plan is ambitious because I've left my job to focus on study for 3 months. So that's going back to your hypothesis, Thomas, that if you have time off, if you have a load of time off, maybe it is possible for sure. That's great to hear that you've that time and you're using it. You're looking at using it for your studies. Well done.
Absolutely.
And it certainly is possible with that in mind. If you were working full time, with 2 weeks be enough in between each exam, it could be tricky, but it has been done in the past. We've had people, I've known people that did the entire qualification in 18 months. Now that's kind of an outlier, but still.
Yeah. we've heard actually, it seems in the last year since COVID, some people have used the time very, very productively. You know, I think people are obviously stuck at home, and some people have just decided, I'm just going to blast through the CIMA syllabus. And you know, we interviewed a student of ours recently who he had passed. I think he passed the whole thing in the whole CIMA qualification in 18 months, I think it was. But he took a slow run at the first few subjects, and then then absolutely flew through the last 2 levels. And he won a prize along the way as well. It was fantastic. And we've heard a few stories like that since COVID. I think people have been just really putting their heads down and using the time productively. It's amazing. So yeah. So Val asks, any tips on studying for the strategic level? Well, that's a big question. I mean, it's a broad one. I think, you know, some of the things we've been saying today, they apply. Start with the easier subject first, and then move up in terms of the difficulty. With the strategic, I mean, it's a mix of things. I mean, it's kind of non-technical stuff for E3, and a good chunk of the P3 syllabus is quite subjective now, which makes it actually kind of tricky. P3, I've heard some people complain about it, saying that CIMA's exam questions are very subjective, select all that apply type questions, which drive everyone crazy. And then F3 is a tough subject. It's a mix of quite difficult theory and calculations as well. So, and then the strategic case study. I mean, I liked the strategic case study. It was probably the exam I liked most. You know, obviously you're you know, in the exam scenario, you're quite a senior person. You're getting to deal with the people high up in the organization. You've got a long-term strategic focus. You're kind of considering multiple stakeholders and the wider environment within which your business is operating. So you're thinking competitors, you're thinking regulators, you're thinking the wider industry. So I found that really an interesting subject, but others don't like it so much. They prefer the purely technical subjects. Other tips on the strategic level, guys? I mean, besides what we usually say, you know, that when you're studying the objective tests, it's questions first. It's, you know, it should be very much question focused practice on an ongoing basis. Too many people, I think, leave question practice until the end. So they work through a text or something like that, and they're not really doing questions, and they leave it to the last few days before an exam. That's not the right approach. You should be incorporating questions into your practice and your study from day one. Very, very, very important.
I've just shared 2 articles there in the chat box, covering some kind of key principles from the science of learning, and that you can apply to your CIMA studies. I mean, it's not specifically for the strategic level, but it applies at all levels. And they're free articles from our website that some students sometimes miss or overlook, but they are useful guides that you can use to structure your study. And I think we have a video actually as well, which I'll share. 1 second, I'll go and get that, which might be useful.
Yeah. Keep an eye on our YouTube channel. We're pretty active there. And the blog, you know, there are lots of free articles there. And we've been quite prolific there recently, I would say, for us. That's thanks to Hugo. There's been a lot of blog articles published in the last month or so. Here's a question that's coming up a little bit more recently. Any recommendations on what to do after CIMA? And I had a stab at that again on our YouTube channel. There's a video there. Maybe Hugo, you could find that. And
I'll do that right now.
Post the link. I think it's a great question, and I really like to see that question being asked, because I think that it's a mistake to think that once you've done your formal qualifications, they could be degrees or postgrads or qualifications like CIMA, and they're all great. I think that some people make the mistake of thinking that, learning, you know, my education is done now, and really it should never stop. And there are many more paths to learning other than formal qualifications. you should be educating yourself, and you should be utilizing all of the stuff that exists online. And there's such a great mix of free, high quality material on YouTube. It's just a search away. And then there are short courses, there are longer courses. There's all sorts of stuff. And of course, there are books, which should never go out of fashion. So keep learning. You have to, because if you don't, your competitor is going to have an advantage there. The next time you go for promotion, the person that is also going for it will have an edge on you if they're lifelong learners. As to what you actually decide to study, it's determined by your own career path, and that will vary for everyone. So there are some of our students, quite a few students, I think, would have ambitions to work in senior finance positions as finance directors or possibly CFOs. And both of those roles would call for a good mix of technical and softer skills. I would say in particular, communication skills would be important as you move up to the senior positions in a business. And I think it's probably a mistake that some accountants make, overemphasizing the importance of technical skills and maybe ignoring the communication skills. So if that was a weakness or something that you were ignoring, it would be worth looking at that. What are your communication skills like, both spoken and written? So that would be one to think about if that's your target. I think a qualification like CIMA prepares you pretty well for both sides of that. You've got the kind of softer strategic skills and an understanding of the softer organizational skills that are important in a company. So you've got a little bit of an understanding what HR does and marketing does, and how to motivate people, etc., etc. Don't ignore the digital stuff, because I think CIMA has been right to emphasize how important all things digital are, because we're all expected to be, pretty computer savvy and to be aware of these trends, big data, cybersecurity, etc. So you might want to go further into one of those areas as well to make yourself stand out. I've talked about this before, that this notion of skill stacking, which is you kind of take seemingly quite different skills and you kind of put them together. And I think that can make for a very unique profile, because there are lots of people that have the CIMA qualification, but there are far fewer people who have the CIMA qualification and, a good understanding of all things digital, and maybe even going beyond that, they have actually got some technical coding skills. So they know the basics of HTML and CSS and maybe even a little bit of JavaScript, or they're quite good with, in-depth Excel macros and things like that, which is a step on the path towards, computer programming. Or they're really good with big data, or they're good with, so those kinds of systems as well that companies are using, things like SAP or, so that could be a way to stand out as well. And as I said, those softer skills is too. If you're a really good communicator and you're CIMA qualified, you're going to stand out. So there'd be some of the thoughts I would have, and also just identify people who already are in the position that you want to get to. Go talk to them, see what it is that makes them stand out. What is their background? What are the skills they have? Both formal qualifications and stuff that they're doing on their own. Ask them about their favorite books. What books have they read? What little courses have they taken online? Interesting videos they've seen. But get it into your head, absolutely, that it's a lifelong pursuit of learning. You can't stop. And it's a mix of things. It's formal qualifications, it's books, it's videos, it's short courses, it's longer courses. Keep an open mind as well. Guys, anything to add there? Or
no, that was great.
It's really good. No, I know from my own personal experience when I was CIMA qualified, I think Thomas touched on it there. It's good to look at tech stuff if you're interested in it. A lot of accountants are not amazing at it, so even if you have a basic understanding of things like Python, I mean, when I finished up, when I was fully qualified, I moved into more data analytics stuff and business intelligence stuff, and it wasn't so much the soft end of it; it was more the harder end of it, and that was certainly an interesting career path. You know what I mean? So, I mean, definitely worth looking at tech-based things. Coding it's very affordable to learn about these things. You know what I mean? So, certainly if you search in Tableau and Power BI and all those things, why not? You know what I mean? It's a way to stand out for sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna actually. I took a course very recently that is kind of it's not coding, but it's kind of in between. It's almost coding. It's called no code. All right, so there's it's great. I wish I had known about it probably much earlier. I wish I'd known about some of the tools that they utilize when I was working in finance, in corporate finance, because I could definitely see how a finance analyst would utilize some of these tools. So going beyond spreadsheets, which is what all finance analysts, that's their bread and butter. But not many of them go beyond that. So you could use database tools like Airtable. Maybe some of you have heard of that one. You can use integration tools to connect different software services. So one very famous one is called Zapier. There's another one called Integramat, which is like a rival of Zapier's. They're absolutely so powerful in connecting different data sets and doing more with your information in that spreadsheet. You can do amazing things with those tools. So I'll actually include a link here because the course I took, they're running a new course soon. And the organization's called MakerPad. They have lots of tutorials on their website as well. And I could see how a finance person would benefit from using these tools. Most of the people actually who took the course were computer programmers themselves. So they even those, people with very rich experience as developers are seeing how useful these no-code tools are. So you don't have to get into the code. You can just very quickly set these up, and they're very intuitive. A lot of these tools to use, the visual displays, drag and drop type settings. So that would be a really interesting one, I think, for finance people to look into. No-code tools, and that organization MakerPad is brilliant for that stuff. Okay, we've got a couple of minutes left, but maybe there are no more questions. Nope.
The answers were just so good.
I think so, yeah. Everything's been cleared up. All CIMA-related doubts are just, yeah, they no longer exist. So yeah, absolutely great questions, guys. And we really like doing these sessions. We'll continue to do these. I think, once a month we will do an Ask Me Anything session. They're free. So please spread the word. If you know anyone who's studying CIMA, feel free to forward them the links. Keep an eye on your email. We try to only send out emails when we've got something of value to share with students. Article links or free webinar sessions or upcoming courses. So keep an eye on that. You're very welcome, Val. Thank you, Mushtaq. Dorota, the elite course for the SCS, how does that work? How many hours a week of online lectures? So we run these elite courses every 3 months for each of the case study windows, and the next one is for August. Overall, it's about 22 hours of class time, live classes between webinars and workshops. The workshops are they're more intimate sessions. So they're small, they're maybe 15 students, 20 students. So there's a lot of interaction between the tutor and the students. There's 5 mock exams that are marked included in that course. We've got weekly office hours on top of those classes and workshops as well. So it would be Hugh actually in August that does those. So every week Hugh will be available on a Zoom call, so you can just pop in as well and ask any questions that you have, any problems that you're having. What else? Am I leaving something out as part of the course? You get access to all of the content at vivatuition.com, the on-demand stuff, so you can go back and look at our recordings for the objective test subjects E3, F3, P3. It's a great course. It's a really, really complete course. Yeah, so Dorota, the mock exams that are available through All Access, yes, they're the same mock exams that would be part of the elite course. However, the mock exams you get as part of All Access don't include marking, whereas on the elite course, marking is included, okay?
Which is really good, for getting feedback and we provide feedback on each task on the paper, so it's invaluable. It's really, really good.
Yeah. So yeah, Dorota, if you have any further questions at all about the elite course, just drop me an email at thomasnewman@vivatuition.com. Okay. And I'm absolutely happy to answer your queries, and we could even arrange a quick call as well if my email doesn't clear things up. So I'm popping my email in there. We've got a late question there from Thiruvaran. Trying to subscribe to Viva. I'm starting with MCS and I'm working full-time as well. Please advise me a time and cost-effective package suitable for the November MCS sitting. I think the most cost-effective thing that Viva has is the All Access membership through Varan. It's very complete. So that's great. So that, there's an offer there for £229 for everything at vivatuition.com for 365 days. So what that would allow you to do is you could take the MCS course, our standard MCS course, look at all of the E2, F2 and P2 videos and questions. And then once you pass that, you would go into the strategic level and you could access all of the courses that are part of the All Access membership as well there. So I would recommend that one. Okay. 2 minutes, guys. Last 2 minutes for questions. Anything else?
Just including the elite there, I think you were asking, is there anything else that might have been missed? There's access to tutors' mail, in this case it'd be me, which is a big thing, and as well there's an online community. So there's a community which would be your class, your class fellow peers, which is always good. So that's another two aspects of it as well.
Well, Dorota, that comment, I'm going to sleep well tonight. That's just, we love to see that. So thank you very much. That's very, very kind of you. Very, very good of you. I'm so happy that you find All Access so good. I'm going to read it out for the benefit of everyone. I would like to state how impressed I am with your online content. I have checked loads of providers and nobody really compares. The All Access is amazing. We think it's a great offer as well, and but you can never be sure until you actually put something up and students start using it. And we do hear repeatedly that students really find it very, very good, All Access. So yeah, we're going to keep adding stuff to the All Access offer. We have big plans for All Access. And that's one of the benefits, I think, as well, of having a subscription, that you benefit every time we update questions or add new questions or add new videos. And the other thing about All Access is you get access to all of the live sessions that we do. We invite all of our All Access students. So anytime we do a live webinar or a hotspot webinar to look at a tricky syllabus area, always our All Access students are invited. Okay. So Dorota asks, what are you planning on adding? Okay, so we're going to be running lots of hotspot webinars that we will then include in our all access packs. And we're currently updating our questions for a lot of the subjects. Probably we'll be adding sort of summary notes in the form of, PowerPoints, etc., for each of the chapters. With the case studies, we're kind of just tweaking those a little bit. I don't think there's anything major that we're going to change there. We might be adding some additional questions to future case study packs, for example. And what we're changing as well in the coming months is the layout of the website. So that's going to change. It's going to be much, much more user-friendly, much easier to navigate, and it's going to have some new functionalities that are really useful for students. You'll be able to compare, for example, your average score to the average score of all students taking a particular subject to see how you're comparing. That would be one thing. There will be an enroll in course functionality, so that when you enroll in a course, you'll get lots of additional information. You'll get prompts to register for live webinars and things like that. So yeah, those are some of the things that we'll be adding in the coming months. Okay, guys. So we'll leave it there, I think. Thank you very much for joining. And this session is recorded. We'll be sending out the recording in the next, I think, 24 hours or so. You should receive an email. We'll also put it up on YouTube if you want to refer to it. That's it. The very best of luck with your studies.
Good luck, guys. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All the best.